I'll never forget the first person I ever had to fire for cause. I checked with this was years ago. Nice guy, product manager for one of our products. And and I had hired him and liked him. And he just at some point stopped performing, like nothing was happening. I felt like nothing was happening. And I felt like I wasn't getting reporting from him adequately. I felt like he wasn't moving things forward. And I talked to HR before deciding to finally terminate him. And I showed them these email threads of me being okay, like I need to have this is when the deadline is for that. I need to have like being really clear, trying to be really, really, really clear. And they were like, you've been more than clear. If he's surprised, that's on him. So in the conversation, when I go to let him know today's your last day, like this has not been working out, he comes to tell me that his dad had been diagnosed with cancer and he had been going up to Sacramento to take care of his dad and, this whole long story. Now, for a while, I was like to myself, I was like, why didn't he ever come to me? Why didn't he ever tell me? But then years later, I think about it a little differently. And I'm like, why did I never say what happened at this point where he was doing fine and then things went off the rails? Why did I never say, what's going on in your personal life? Like, what's happening? Do you need support? Do you need a leave? Do you need, like, I didn't find it out. He didn't offer it. He never once mentioned anything about it. But I also didn't make it safe for him to do so because I didn't ever do anything but harp on, like, this is what I expect, and you are not delivering on what I expect. You really need to do X, Y, and Z. So contrast that with like 15 years later, one of our really, really valued employees offered her resignation. And she didn't report directly to me anymore. We had grown. And I was like, this is not okay. And I asked the person, like, why? And she was like, oh, she needs to move on or whatever. She seems pretty upset on it. Right. And, HR sometimes will train you to not, if someone's already given notice, they're unsalvageable, right? They've made up their mind. That's a message you get a lot to not try. But I was like, oh my God, this will be a loss. So I called her up and I'm like, I do not accept your resignation. Like, why don't you tell me what's going on? So it just turned out that she wanted to move back. At the time, had some remote days, but most people, half our workforce worked in the Bay Area and came into the office at least some number of days a week. We had a New York office, a bunch of people were out there. We had some early employees that were all over the place, but she had been hired to come into the Bay Area office and she came into the Bay Area office. And so it turns out she was tired of living in San Francisco. She wanted to move back down to Southern California where her family was. She wanted to go to her next stage of life. She wanted, like, when she got married and had kids, she wanted it to be in Southern California. So why is she going to stay? She had gotten older.
in the city.
We hired her when she was like 25, and it was 6 years later or something. And her life was just, and I'm like, so what made you think you couldn't still do your job from Southern California? And she had made assumptions about that we would not be okay with this. And I was like, let's try it. Like, it's totally worth trying it. But I feel like, why wouldn't that work? Plenty of people work remotely. She moved down to Southern California. She stayed with us until past when we were acquired. She stayed for a while. I don't remember if she left before I left the acquiring company, but she stayed a good long time after that conversation. And she got married and she had her kid and she lives near her family. I mean, and I had just learned that just ask the questions, and really care about the answer. Like, I know sometimes people ask you questions and you don't feel like they don't really care. Why am I going to tell them? Why am I going to be vulnerable? Why am I going to be open? If you gotta, if you're managing people, you have to sincerely care about the answers. If you ask someone a question, you have to sincerely care what the answer is. And maybe it would have been a reason we couldn't have managed around, but it wasn't at all. In fact, I was shocked she felt like that was her choice. Like, I thought wow, we have remote employees. Why doesn't she assume she can be one? But she just had gotten into a way of thinking about her job that we needed to adapt on both our ends.
Sometimes, employees don't realize that they have options and they can do different things. So very interesting that you can, recover a good employee with, by just
Yeah.
connecting with people.
The conventional wisdom is that you don't, once someone's given their notice, like, even, yeah, they're done. And sometimes people, of course, sometimes counter and stuff, but their mindset is that they're not gonna take it, or if they take it, they're still a short timer. And then they treat them that way, and then it's a self-fulfilling prophecy, you know? So, I'm like, either sincerely try to retain them or let them go, but don't try to retain them and then judge them for the fact that they ever put you in that position. I think that's what happens.